Welcome to Tigray Television. I'm Mary Nimano. I'll be reading the news for today. Stay tuned. The government of Tigray issued a statement marking the 34th Martyrs' Day in Tigray and said that this day celebrates the remarkable sacrifice of the people of Tigray for freedom and justice. The statement recalled 34 years back in June of 22nd when the military junta, the Derg, bombarded the marketplace and housing, Eastern Tigray, killing at least 2,300 civilians and injuring scores more, and the similar attack on the marketplace in Togoga by Ethiopia's defense forces on the same day, 33 years later. Finally, the statement said that the day symbolizes the resilience of the people of Tigray and their commitment to securing their collective rights. Member of Tigray Central Command Getachew Reda gave a press briefing earlier today where he stated that there is yet to be any direct engagement with the Ethiopian government, but that there appears to be an increased interest on the side of the Ethiopian government for a peaceful settlement of the conflict. Getachew also emphasized that his government has always been committed to a peaceful resolution of the conflict.
We've heard, of course, the Prime Minister addressing Parliament that he was ready to negotiate with the government of Tigray. And in fact, he has also mentioned that he has set up a committee to spearhead the negotiations process on behalf of his government. Well, for us, it kind of tallies with what has been communicated to us by interlocutors who've been doing some sort of shuttle diplomacy between our two sides. We haven't yet had any direct engagement with the Abiy government, but we still continue to have back-channel communications. And our understanding is that there appears to be a heightened interest in giving peace a chance. And for us, peace is a strategic choice, not a tactical, not something we peddle by way of tactical considerations or to buy time or to just secure some diplomatic advantage or whatever. We believe that the interests of the people of Tigray, the security and safety of the people of Tigray, and the right to self-determination of the people of Tigray are better secured and better guaranteed peacefully. But it doesn't mean that simply because there is a declared intention on the part of the Addis Ababa authorities that will immediately translate into a real chance for peace. While we hope to capitalize on such a publicly stated promise, we, however, remain vigilant and would do everything in our power to make sure that our readiness to achieve or to realize the dreams and aspirations of the people of Tigray are still there. We'll never let our guards down, no matter what. But to the extent that there is readiness on the part of the government in Addis Ababa, the authorities in Addis Ababa, for peace, that simply tallies with our own readiness to go for peaceful resolution to a political problem, which should not have led to the kind of conflict that has claimed the lives of tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of Tigrayans in the first place.
Getachew also stated that the Western Tigray and other issues such as the restoration of basic services to the region are not up for negotiation and said that the withdrawal of all external forces was essential for a successful negotiation process.
Western Tigray, as the name itself implies, is Western Tigray. It's not part of Amhara, it's not part of this or part of that. So nothing short of full return of Tigray control over Western Tigray would be considered positive enough development for us. So this cannot and should not be subject for negotiations. We can negotiate over how the forces are going to withdraw. I'm not sure, but this is not something we are going to negotiate. The status of Western Tigray is non-negotiable. So the most important issue for us is we insist that all forces withdraw from Western Tigray. And we want this to happen peacefully. But it doesn't mean that we are naive enough to expect that this would happen easily. So while we reserve the right to resort to any means at our disposal to ensure full control, Tigray control over Western Tigray, we would at the same time do everything to make sure that this control is regained peacefully and our people are safely returned to Western Tigray, and our people in Western Tigray get a full measure of freedom, full measure of safety and security, and that can only be achieved if the forces that are now perpetrating all kinds of crimes against our people in Western Tigray fully withdraw from that part of Tigray.
A European Union delegation led by the Commissioner for Crisis Management visited Mekelle. In rare visit to Tigray's capital on Tuesday, the visit is just one of a handful by high-level officials over the past year. While the Ethiopian government has imposed an effective siege on Tigray that has practically severed the state from the rest of the world, the delegates visited Aider Hospital and spoke with the president of Tigray, President Debretsion ገብረሚካኤል, and other higher officials. Our reporter Abil Tsagabu has more.
A delegation from European Union arrived in Mekelle on Tuesday morning, in rare visit to Tigray following the almost year-long siege on the region that has practically sealed off the region from the world. The delegation led by the EU's Commission for Crisis Management also included EU's High Representative to Ethiopia, Ambassador Ronald Kobia, Ronald Sword, Cabinet Advisor to the Commissioner, and Dominique Albert, Head of the Unit on the Horn of Africa for the EU. The delegates visited Aider Hospital, the largest hospital in the regional state that has been forced to discontinue providing services due to lack of essential supplies and vital services such as medication, fuel, and electricity. The delegates also spoke with the President of Tigray, Debretsion ገብረሚካኤል, and other higher officials regarding the humanitarian situation in the region and the restoration of vital services. The delegates also spoke with religious leaders who emphasized on the need for Eritrean troops to withdraw from Tigray and the importance of accountability to ensure sustainable peace in the region. The Commissioner for Crisis Management, in response, Janis Lenarsis, said that the EU will support the demand for justice, as justice is one of the pillars of the EU, and also underlined the EU's commitment to peace in Ethiopia.
We had a brief stay with the head of Tigray's Bureau of Agriculture and Rural Development, Dr. Attinkut Mezgabu, regarding the delegates' visit to Mekelle. Dr. Attinkut said the meeting was successful in that the delegates from the EU and the government saw eye to eye on the need to restore basic services and ensure that unfettered humanitarian access to reach the millions in dire need of assistance. Take a listen.
They were in Mekelle to visit and to see by their own eye what is happening in Tigray. Of course, they were aware about what was happening in Tigray. They were making a lot of statements a long time ago, but this is their first visit to see by their own eye. So they visited Aider Hospital, which is the largest hospital in Tigray, which was supposed to serve the people of Tigray and neighboring regions like Afar and some parts of Amhara as well. And they have seen what is going on there. Actually, they appreciate the staff's commitment over there. They are serving their people for the last 11 months, almost just 12 months, a year, without salary. They appreciate the commitment of the staffs. and they have seen also the facilities and the services provided by the hospital. They were very sad when they see people are dying because of very simple inputs. Even if the equipments are there, they are not able to make laboratory analysis, some diagnosis. People are dying every day with very simple and minor cause. So this also touches the heart of all of them, because that is not just requiring too much effort, but it requires basic inputs. So they understand what is happening in practice. Also, they had also a discussion with the president of the government of Tigray and some officials, top officials, on matters related to humanitarian services. We have tried from our side just to explain what is happening. People are suffering just with hunger, so food is just piling here in Maqala. That is basically because of fuel shortage. Of course, they understand this problem, and they promise that they will try just to make it easy, this kind of service and availability of fuel. And they have seen also other services, like there is no telecommunication, banking service, and other facility. So they said just especially when they visit either hospital and just they understand the situation, I think they will try their best at least to open this kind of thing, to resolve it. So this is a great hope for us. This is like just it's like a base for even peace building among the federal government and our government. And we do expect also their role in making sure those services, those basic services, which are not related with political issues, should be just available in Tigray. So we do hope things will be improved in a very short period of time.
The Global Society for Tigrayan Scholars sent an open letter to the president of the World Bank Group, David Malpass, on Monday, expressing concern over the group's decision to resume unconditional and unregulated finance to the Ethiopian government amidst the war on Tigray. GSTS urged the group to put in place a safeguard mechanism to ensure funds are not diverted to finance the genocidal war on Tigray and several other conflicts in Ethiopia that have predominantly targeted civilians. Sara Kalali has the report.
On Monday, the Global Society for Tigrayan Scholars sent an open letter to the President of the World Bank, David Malpass, regarding the group's decision to resume financing projects by the Ethiopian government without putting in place conditions that ensure the government will work towards an end to the war on Tigray and other parts of Ethiopia. The Society added that the funds by the group will send a wrong signal and stifle the limited window of opportunity to end the war and also reverse small gains towards peaceful resolution. The Society said that it had evidence that the Ethiopian government was diverting public funds from external development assistance directly dispersed to the country's financial management system as the main source of foreign currency to finance the ongoing war, recalling that the Ethiopian government is preparing and mobilizing resources to launch an all-out war against Tigray once access to the much-needed foreign currency is secured through assistance. The Society highlighted the planned and approved budget for the 2022 and 23 fiscal year allocates a disproportionately higher share for the Ministry of Defense and National Security agencies, again signaling the government's plan to mobilize and procure military hardware and train security officers for yet another war. The Society said that the bank has failed to put a robust strategy in place, firstly to ensure that funds are not diverted to finance the genocidal war, and secondly to mitigate the political conflict and fiduciary risks in delivering the much-needed social services to the vulnerable groups given the blockade, urging the group to put forward a safeguard and accountability mechanism that ensures that IDA funds are not used to harm victims of rape and conflict-related sexual violence, starve over 7 million of the civilian population of Tigray, and finance finance the ongoing war on Tigray in other parts of Ethiopia. The society also urged the group to launch bank-based investigation into the deliberate government-sponsored lootings and destructions of projects in Tigray that were financed by the IDA, including schools, health facilities, economic and social infrastructures such as water and sanitation facilities.
The Mahbara Dego massacre, one of the most widely reported massacres of the Tigray War, took place in January of 2021, but was not only brought to light when images of the deadly massacre, recorded by the Ethiopian soldiers themselves, was brought to light by Tigray Media House months later. An investigative report by the BBC and CNN would reveal that the massacre was committed by the 25th Division of Ethiopia's National Defense Forces on a cliff near Mahbara Dego, a small village almost 20 kilometers from Aksum. The families and friends of victims, however, would not get the opportunity to properly lay rest on their loved ones until June of 2021, when Ethiopian forces finally withdrew from Mahbara Dego, allowing the community to collect the remains of the young men. Aregawi Garumkail has more.
One of the most gruesome atrocities of the war on Tigray was the Mahbara Dego massacre. In January of 2021, Ethiopian soldiers would kill at least 73 young men. Ethiopian soldiers would round up young men from their homes in the village of Mahbara Dego, just 18 kilometers from Aksum, and take them to a cliff. There, Ethiopian soldiers would execute the young men.
One Mahbara Dego resident told the BBC that more than 70 people from the area were taken away by Ethiopian soldiers in January and were still missing. Another man from a neighbouring village told us his brother had been killed in Mahbara Dego in January.
Video images of execution, filmed by the Ethiopian soldiers themselves, would surface months later. Investigative reports conducted by CNN and BBC based on the video images and the testimony of the loved ones of victims would reveal that dozens had been taken from their homes and killed by the Ethiopian soldiers from the 25th Division of Ethiopia's National Defense Forces. The young men were thrown down a cliff.
The armed men are wearing uniforms that match those used by the Ethiopian National Defense Force, or ENDF. On one of these men, we see an arm patch in the colours of the Ethiopian national flag. They're speaking Amharic, one of the official languages of Ethiopia.
The story is made more devastating by the fact that Ethiopian forces would camp near the place of massacre, blocking family members from finding and burying their loved ones. For months, family members wouldn't know exactly what happened in Mahbara Dego until June of 2021, when Ethiopian forces withdrew from Mahbara Dego, and family members could finally retrieve the bodies and lay their loved ones to rest.
After the ceremony at the church, the families gathered to bury the dead in a mass grave. Their grief, they say, inflamed by their government's inaction. The identities of the victims are known. The division...
The Ethiopian government is made accountable.
A year ago, on June 22nd, the Ethiopian government bombarded the Togoga marketplace on the busiest hour of the busiest day of the week, an attack that would result in the death of 64 civilians and injured 400 more. We visited Togoga a year later and met with a local official that tells us that the airstrike has left the district in ruins, with many dead and wounded, the property of civilians destroyed. The official says the residents of the district have found it impossible to recuperate in light of the siege that has cut off almost all humanitarian assistance to the area and left the region with little medical supplies to treat survivors of the airstrike. Wintakidane has the details.
Like every other Tuesday morning, June 22 of 2021 was a busy day in Togoga, just 25 kilometers west of Mekelle. Tuesday was market day in the small village. People would gather from neighboring villages and towns to do their shopping. But what unfolded that particular Tuesday in June of 22 would make turn the Togoga marketplace into the scene of a massacre. At around midday, the busiest hours of the market day, an aircraft by Ethiopia's National Defense Forces would drop 2 bombs, killing at least 65 civilians. Gabriel Jesus Atzvaha, the administrator of the village of Togoga, remembers that day vividly.
June 22 of last year was the busiest day of the week because it was a market day. There were many people here from many surrounding districts of Inderta and Dogatenben. They came here to purchase and sell what they had. They dropped 2 bombs when there were so many gathered and busy in the market. It was at around 1 p.m. Many were wounded and died. We only survived because one of the bombs fell on a house. If both the bombs had fallen on the market, there would have been no one left to tell the story.
Gabriel Jesus tells us that the bombardment was targeting innocent civilians, many of whom were children, women, and older people.
There were no armed men at the marketplace. The market was filled with children, women with vegetables, men with livestock they want to sell, and innocent civilians hoping to purchase items they need for their homes.
According to Gabriel Jesus, 65 people had passed away during the bombardment, while more than 400 were injured.
The Togoga airstrike took the lives of 64 people immediately. Another passed away after reaching Aidar hospital in Magala. Ambulances had come here to take injured people to the hospital, but they were turned back at Manbas. Many died in ambulance while being turned back by enemy troops. A total of 65 people lost their lives and more than 400 were injured.
Gabriel Jesus says every day since the airstrike has been more and more challenging, as many have lost their property and have very limited access to health care.
It's getting more and more difficult since the airstrike. Residents have not received any assistance since the airstrike. Every day is another day of misery for the residents of Togoga. I wish the children could get food and medication.
What makes the Togoga massacre so painful, even a year after it has unfolded, is that perpetrators are yet to be held accountable. And despite mounting evidence, the Ethiopian government has continued to gaslight victims and loved ones.
34 years ago, on the 22nd of June, Ethiopian forces would conduct an aerial attack on another marketplace in Housing, an eastern part of Tigray. The aerial bombardment would last for hours, killing hundreds and possibly thousands of civilians. A Human Rights Watch report published in 1990, 2 years after the deadly strike, and would call it a systematic attack on civilians that aimed to ensure a maximum number of civilian casualties. Our reporter Salome Tigrai would take us back in time and tell us more about the attack that many victims have left behind.
34 years ago, on the 22nd of June, 1988, hundreds of people were killed in a marketplace in Housing, Tigray, following an aerial attack by the military junta, Derg. Formidable oppositions and armed resistances against the Derg would start in the outsets of the military rule, with the movements growing through the years. One of the major opponents of the Derg, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, had been making major advancements against the regime since its establishment in 1975, with it controlling many towns and cities across Tigray and shaking the Derg's authority. The late 80s marked a time when the military junta faced multiple military defeats, while the rebels of the time made major military advances. The Derg would start to bombard civilian installations with the aim of avenging its defeat, killing thousands, destroying property, and instilling fear. As a continuation of this brutal act, the air forces of the Derg would conduct several rounds of airstrikes on a civilian marketplace in Housing on the 22nd of June, 1988. The market in Housing attracted people from all around the province and as far as Gondar and Eritrea. That Wednesday morning, the Housing market was packed by thousands of people who would come to trade livestock, grains, and other goods. Housing had not fallen into the hands of the TPLF, and so unlike the market practice of TPLF-controlled areas, where trading was done at night time, the weekly Wednesday market continued to be held during daylight hours in Housing. The Derg would then send 6 fighter jets into the skies of the crowded Housing market and start bombing the area mercilessly. The bombing started in the late morning and went on till nightfall, killing thousands of people along with their animals. According to eyewitnesses Human Rights Watch had spoken to then, 2 helicopters came low overhead and circled for about an hour. An hour later, they came back with MiGs. While the helicopters blocked people who were trying to escape, the MiGs concentrated on bombing the market. The day-long airstrikes made sure no one could come out alive. As the fighter jets left, people from surrounding areas would come to identify and pick up the dead bodies of friends and loved ones, and also to help those that might have survived. In the market, where bodies laid over bodies, and where many were searching for families among the dead, the fighter jets would return half an hour later and bomb the people who had come to help, killing scores more. Many people sheltered in houses, but the jets turned on these too. By the end of the day, there was almost no building left standing. A report by Human Rights Watch, issued in 1990, 2 years after this deadly attack, says that the attack in housing was deliberate and systematic, and that it was carefully planned to arrange for a succession of MiGs and helicopters to be present at housing. The report also suspects the use of napalm and phosphate by the fighter jets on civilians. And explaining the reason for why housing was chosen, Africa Watch would state that housing was selected as a target because, not being in a rebel-controlled area, the market still met during the day, and there were no TPLF fighters in the area with anti-aircraft artillery, something that could have made the attack more dangerous. The true number of those who died in housing airstrike will never be known, but estimated reports indicate that hundreds, maybe thousands of people were killed in a single day, and many were left scarred for life. June 22 is celebrated in Tigray as the Day of Martyrs. It is meant to commemorate the many that have lost their lives during the deadly attack, and the thousands more that have lost their lives during resistance. But what makes the housing massacre so gruesome is that, almost 35 years after the deadly massacre, perpetrators are still at large and yet to take accountability for their actions.
The killing of at least 200 ethnic Amhara civilians was confirmed in the district of Gimbi in western Wallogga of the Oromia region this weekend. According to multiple news outlets, an armed group attacked Amhara residents in the area on Saturday in a killing spree that lasted hours. While Ethiopia's state-appointed Human Rights Commission has alleged that the attack was conducted by the Oromo Liberation Front, following clashes with the Ethiopian government, the OLA, through its spokesperson, Oda Turbi, denied the accusation and said that the attack was actually conducted by Ethiopian government forces as they retreated from their camps in Gimbi, following a successful offensive by the OLA. In a statement following the massacre, the Amhara Association of America called for the resignation of Abiy Ahmed and President of Oromia region Shimelis Abdisa. UN Notra's Peace Observatory had published a report last week saying it had recorded 19 instances of organized violence in Ethiopia in just 1 week, of which all instances with civilian casualties were recorded in the Oromia region. The report indicated that Fano, an irregular